Hi everybody, this is Paul Rizik, your Prescott Unified School District Farm to School Coordinator, and today I wanted to teach you guys how to make one of my favorite yogurts. It's an Icelandic yogurt called Skyr. Now, Skyr is different from most yogurts in North America, which we'll talk about later, but for now, I'm going to go over the ingredient list here so you'll know what to get. All this stuff I got at Fry's, by the way, so it's there if you look. So first off, this is probably the strangest of it all. These are called cheesecloths. So you're going to use this in your strainer here as a means to strain the curds from the whey, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The second thing you need is a gallon of milk. I prefer whole milk personally, but there's no reason you couldn't use skim or 2% or even raw milk if that's the milk you like. The fourth thing you need is the skyr that you'll use as your base. We're going to talk about yogurt cultures in a little bit, but it's very important that you have some pre-made skyr that you can add to the mixture to turn the milk into yogurt. Other things you might need is a measuring cup, a small bowl and a fork or a whisk, a food thermostat, a bowl and a mixing spoon, a pot to cook the yogurt in, and this thing called rennet. These are called rennet tablets. You can find them generally in grocery store aisles with Jell-O and stuff, but this is a really important part of the yogurt making process that we'll talk about as we get to it. So yeah, once you get all your ingredients, it's just a matter of adding the milk to the pot here. And then putting the pot on the stove. So be sure to get your parents to help you if you want to do this at home. So we've got our pot on the oven here. Apologies, it's probably a little bit too big for the job. But you're going to want to take your food thermostat every now and again and just put it in here and try to get to the solution to be about 185 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the sort of magic level where it's not quite boiling yet, but it's warm enough that it'll kill any bacteria that's already inside it. And then while this process is going on, you're going to want to stir as much as you can, just so that you can avoid scalding the bottom of the pot. You want to avoid scalding the milk as much as possible. And so while this is baking, let's talk a little bit about cultures and what goes into making yogurt. When you eat yogurt, you're not just eating yogurt. There's actually millions and millions of little creatures inside yogurt that we call bacteria. Bacteria is actually what turns milk into yogurt. Most of the time when we talk about bacteria, we talk about bad bacteria. Mold, for instance, is bad bacteria. And if you get sick from bad bacteria, the doctor will usually give you what's called antibiotics. This is medicine that kills bacteria. However, not all bacteria is bad. Bacteria in things like yogurt, kimchi, and sauerkraut are what we call probiotic foods. That means instead of killing bacteria, it actually introduces more bacteria into your body. The science about probiotics isn't settled yet, but a lot of cultures believe that having a nice balance of healthy gut bacteria promotes your immune system and helps you digest food more easily. So what we're doing when we add our pre-made skyr to the milk is that we're allowing the skyr culture, which is a type of bacteria that grows in skyr, to multiply across the entire milk solution and turn that milk into yogurt. The problem that we run into is that bacteria already lives in the milk. This bacteria is harmless to drink, but it actually competes with the skyr bacteria. That's why we raise the temperature of the milk before we add the skyr culture. We're actually killing all the old bacteria that's in the milk so we can add new bacteria into it. Once the milk cools down to a temperature that the bacteria can live in again, we add the skyr bacteria and cover the pot so that only the skyr bacteria will grow inside the milk pot. The other ingredient we add to make yogurt is called rennet. Rennet is a chemical taken from a baby cow that causes a chemical reaction to separate what's called the curds and the whey from milk. Separating the curds and whey is very important when you're making yogurt, because if you kept the whey and the curds together, the yogurt would come out super liquidy and not as pure. The curds will turn into our yogurt, while we'll separate out the whey and use it for something else. This whole process of making yogurt, by the way, is almost identical to the process of making cheese. The only thing that's different between making yogurt and making cheese is the type of bacteria you use. That's why using pre-made skyr is so important, because if you add a different kind of bacteria, a completely different food will come out. The reason we're making Skyr, by the way, is that it's one of the healthiest yogurts that exists. It contains more protein, less fat, and less sugar than any other yogurt on the market. Anyway, now that we've gone over the science of yogurt making, let's check in and see how our Skyr is doing. Alright, so as you can see, we're just about hitting that sweet spot of 185 degrees Fahrenheit. I also, you'll notice, moved the milk into a more reasonably sized container just so it'll cook a bit more evenly. And so once it hits 185, we're going to turn off the heat and let it cool down to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to combine the Skyr into this cooled mixture. Alright, so our mixture is now cooled down to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and so it's time to add the other ingredients into the mixture. So we have our Skyr here, which, as we talked about, has cultures in it. So we've got to mix in the cultures with the mix that we already have. The reason we let it cool down is because, like we talked about, the things in the cultures that turn the yogurt into yogurt are alive. So if we kept the mixture at 180 degrees, they would scald and burn and die. So they've cooled down, thankfully, to 110. So this should be a nice temperature for them to live in and expand. And so just like ease the transition for the bacteria in the cultures, we're going to add about a cup of the mixture into a small bowl, and then stir it together using your fork or your whisk. And then once it gets pretty well combined, we're going to dip it back into the main mix. Hopefully it won't splash everywhere like I did. So now, the other thing we're going to add is our rennet. So like we talked about, rennet's another important part of getting the yogurt right. So we're going to open up one of these tablets. And for the quantity that we made, we'll probably need about 1/8 of one tablet. So this rennet will actually last a long time if you keep doing this. So fortunately, this one is already kind of in halves, so we're going to half it again. Ooh, actually, that's a pretty good amount. So I have a bowl of warm water here. We're going to whisk that together. As you can see, it's starting to mist up as the rennet combines with the water and starts to get activated. It's important to do this at this step, by the way, because rennet usually only lasts about half an hour once you add it to water. So now that this is pretty well mixed, we're going to add this to the mixture, and we're going to stir this again with a wood spoon or with whatever you have that's handy. And once this is all mixed together, we are going to grab a towel or a rag here, and we're going to cover up the pot, and we're going to move it into a warm, dark place. So I found that the best place to do this, I'm sorry, I'm bugging the camera person here. I found the best place to do this is in a oven that's turned off. So we can put it in here. Unfortunately, there's not enough room in this oven, but luckily, in my house, we have this nice little compartment here. So we're going to put this covered pot into the compartment. Again, making sure the oven is not on because we don't want it to get too hot and kill the bacteria. Then we're going to close that and leave it overnight. And tomorrow, we should have some yogurt. So it's the next morning, so we can take out our mixture. And we can move it over here. So if we look at it, take that rag out of the way. So if we come in close here and take a look, you can see that curds have formed from the milk. So we're going to scoop those curds with your spoon into your cheesecloth, and you're going to put the cheesecloth on top of the strainer on top of the bowl so that the whey that has formed will pass through the strainer into the bowl, and the curds will stay within the cheesecloth. So I'll come back to you guys again once this is all scooped out and we can talk about the next steps. Once you've scooped everything into your cheesecloth, you're going to want to put everything into your refrigerator and let it drain for 2 or 3 hours so that all the curds and whey will be fully separated. So it's been a few hours and we've taken the mix out of the fridge, and if you raise this up, take a look at here, you'll notice your bowl should be filled with this clear liquid. This is the whey that we were talking about. So we'll put this aside for now and focus just on the curds, which is, of course, our yogurt. So I have in this nut bag here, you can see, this is all yogurt right here. So from that little canister, we got this whole big sack of it. So this is going to last us for a little bit. So now we can move on to preserving it, and it's just a matter of finding a Tupperware or a bowl. I actually have some cans that I use, and just putting it in the fridge, and then we're all set. Okay, so this is the fun part. We get to kind of customize our Skyr flavors here. So you'll notice I have all my canning jars that I'm going to put the actual Skyr into. I've got some sliced up bananas. I decided to do some banana and honey flavor this time. In the past I've done pineapple, pomegranate, pear, apple, all sorts of stuff, and it's all turned out great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the Skyr mixture here. We're going to pour it as best we can into this bowl. See, look at that. It's nice and firm. It's not super liquidy anymore. It's really separated nicely. So we can just squeeze this all out. We'll get our Skyr, a nice thing. And then this bag, by the way, is reusable, so it's nice. I don't have to keep rebuying these. Ooh, it sounds a little gross, but it tastes great, I promise. Getting just about the last of it out here. And we'll just toss this aside for now. I'll take care of that later. Make sure there's no... Okay, so now we can toss some of our add-ins into here. I don't want to... Well, this bowl might be a little small. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to get a bigger bowl and then we'll come back. But look at how much came out from that one little carton. This is like really cool. Okay, so we've moved our curds into a little bit of a more appropriately sized bowl. And before we add flavors, we're going to take one of our little jars here, or any kind of container, whichever you're using, and we're going to scoop in the plain Skyr into here. This will serve as our base if we ever want to make another batch. So remember how we started with the Skyr that we bought at the grocery store? Well, after you make it for the first time, you won't have to ever do that again, because you'll have your own Skyr that you can use as a culture. All right, and just like that, we've got a culture all ready for the next batch whenever we make it. These cans, by the way, they'll stay for about 2 or 3 weeks in the fridge, so you have some time to eat the Skyr or else make another batch. After that, I would probably just go back to the grocery store and buy a new batch if you want to keep making this. So I'll add these bananas into the mix, and we can then start mixing it together, and then we'll have some nice banana honey Skyr. And there you have it. From that one little container, we got all this yogurt. And so there's nothing left to do but crack one open and dig in. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, actually, one more thing. So, you'll notice here, we got a bunch of whey that's left over. And so there are a lot of things you can do with whey. It's pretty much, as a rule of thumb, you can substitute anything that you would use water for, you can use whey for. So you can just drink it, you can put it in pasta and use it to boil pasta, you can use it to make rice, or, and this will tie it back to the gardens, you can use it to feed your plants, because it's full of a lot of really cool nutrients that your plants will love. So let's take it out back and put it and feed it into our garden. Now, if you're going to water your plants with whey, it's important to not just put straight whey onto your plants because it's a little too much for them. But if you dilute it in water, so if I pour it into this watering can where I've already got some water from before in, you'll get a nice mixed solution that'll be a little bit more mild and manageable for your plants. So there we go. So we have our watering can now, and I'm sure you remember these guys. We can just start putting stuff in here. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about Skyr or anything else farm to school related, leave a comment and I'll be sure to answer it as soon as I can.